Hey, good afternoon. Little songs from the big chair for you. Get ourselves primed and ready for a Tuesday afternoon. Any other big Tears for Fears fans out there? Some of you are way too young. I get it. Thank you, Stuart. Tears for what? Who? The 80s? What? Yeah, I get it. We all used to be that young, Patrick. All right, so let's get started. Homework from last Thursday. Who wants to remind me your homework from last Thursday? I asked that because typically, if you don't know it, you didn't do it.
All right, it was to call 10 people in your data and work on your calendar.
Yeah, thank you so much, Robert. I appreciate knowing that. So let's start with your lead generation, your outreach, right? Client acquisition. Last Wednesday, I told you to call 2 people in your database. If you've never done it before, call 2 people in your database. And a whole bunch of people kind of got on board with that. Thursday, I said, okay, between now and Tuesday, I want you to make that 10, which is basically just 2 a day, right? 2 a day. We're talking really small numbers, but again, we want to kind of prime the pump and get you going. How did that go? Tell me your results, successes, challenges.
Great.
Carol, tell your story.
Well, I got up yesterday and I said, I am not stopping working until I find an appointment. So I worked a 9-hour day. Most of that was prospecting. I made a total of maybe 14 or 15 contacts, both phone, voicemail, sent out some letters. I sent out a blast. And today I made 7 contacts. So between the 2 days were 22 contacts. Love
it. And here's the big $1 million question, right? You got up yesterday. I love when Carol emailed me this story. I decided I was not going to stop until I got an appointment. So Carol, you went to bed last night, I know. You said you worked a 9-hour day. What happened at about 6:15 last night?
That's when I got the appointment. I started prospecting at 10 in the morning. I
love it. I love it. So guys, that's called perseverance. That's called understanding that the job every day is to get up and make appointments so that you can then go on those appointments to convert those appointments into business, right? That's the job. The job isn't listing and selling property. The job is finding, booking, and going on appointments over and over and over and over and over and over again, right? And so I want to just make sure that we have clarity around that, because successful real estate professionals understand the difference, right? Successful business owners, especially in the real estate industry, they get that their job every day is to wake up and find buyers and sellers. Again, it's client acquisition first and foremost. Those who earn less, those who don't last, wake up and think, okay, which of my clients do I have to take care of today? Who am I going out with today? What do I have to do to polish up my marketing, right? Those are all important things, but they are secondary to daily client acquisition, right? And so again, I told you starting a week ago when we started this course, I told you I would always tell you the truth. And that is about as fundamental a truth as exists in the real estate industry. Frankly, it exists in every industry. We just kind of talk about it from the real estate side, right? Think about it. If you own a plumbing supply business, what do you need to do every day? You need to find people who need plumbing supplies.
I just found my problem.
Say it again, Karen.
I just found my problem.
Tell us.
Well, I do. I think about who do I need to take care of. And I do prospect, but I send out a lot of mailings. The market reports and stuff like that. And I call people. But I think I need to be much more aggressive in the direct contact, because when people call me, I'm much more likely to respond than to a mailing or an email. And I want people to reach out to me. Even, there was an incident where I wasn't happy with the service and I called to complain and the guy kept me on the phone. And I thought to myself, that's a really good thing. But I finally hung up on him because we were going around in circles, but he didn't let me go. He didn't say, okay, thank you. I wish you well, goodbye.
Right.
Which
Right.
is a good thing. And the persistence, is really important. And that's what I need to work on.
Yeah, I love that. I love that light bulb because it was funny because we all kind of thought, oh my goodness, what just happened on the screen? And it was literally the light bulb going off over your head. We all saw it. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us, because it's awesome to kind of recognize, step back and recognize, maybe my focus needs to shift a little bit. Maybe I've been doing it this way for X period of time and I need to kind of make a shift and see if something different brings me different results, right?
Yeah.
A coach of mine from yesteryear, Diana Kokoska, she said it best. And she said, in order to get to better, you have to first get through different, right? You can't keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. It doesn't work that way, right? It's actually the definition of what?
Insanity.
Insanity, that's right. Right? So sometimes we have to go in a different direction to say, you know what? What if I start doing something different? Will it bring me different or better results? So recognize that there is that ground floor in our industry. Now, that's not to say, Karen reminds me of something, and it's direct versus indirect, right? You have marketing and prospecting in your business growth. And so in each of those categories, there's direct and indirect. You have direct marketing and indirect marketing. You have direct prospecting and indirect prospecting. Each of those things will bring you forward. The direct portions of the direct versions of those two things bring you forward faster. And if you had to choose between direct marketing and direct prospecting, again, if you're looking for speed to possibility, speed to opportunity, it's that direct prospecting, right? And so you get to go through the motions. They're all important and they all work. It's just a matter of how long does it take and how efficient or effective are some of these things in the course of my day. Jonathan.
Yes.
How are you?
Oh, I'm living the dream, my friend. Yourself?
The same. What do you have for us?
In the last week, I've made about, I'm sorry, I'm just doing my filter so I can see. The last 7 days, I made 87 phone calls and generated 17 leads.
Nice.
3 buyer appointments, signed 2 new buyers, and had a listing go live this weekend. I want more listings though.
Yeah, we all do. Absolutely. The good news is we're gonna focus in on that today, right? Because we're gonna dive in on source of business, and there are definitely sources of business that skew more towards the list side. But I want you guys to listen to what Jonathan just said, because he just verbally described the funnel, right? He had this many people up top here that he could have contacted. He contacted 87. Of those 87, 17 of them turned into leads. Understand, that's not the end of the story. Too many people think that obtaining leads, right, because we're lead generating, is the end of the story. And that's not true, right? You'll be poor and hungry if you stop with generating leads. You have to take it the next step, because those 17 leads turned into 4 appointments, right? I heard 3 on the buy side, 1 on the list side. So 4 appointments. Now we're getting somewhere. And of those 4 appointments, 2 of those buyers are now signed clients, and one of those seller is now a signed client. So from all the possibilities up here, the funnel got kind of skewed down to 87 actual phone calls, 17 leads, 4 appointments, 3 signed clients. Now, hopefully all 3 of those signed clients turn into actual closings, right? From a pro forma perspective, I would look at that and say, you know what, probably 2 of those 3 are destined to close. It might be all 3, but 2 of those 3 are destined to close. So that's where I'm going to draw an income projection from, is from the listing and maybe 1 of those 2 buyers. But you see how that works? That's how the numbers game actually works. And if you're not playing that numbers game at a big level on top, you can't be asking the question. Well, let me restate that. You shouldn't be asking the question of why nothing's dripping out the bottom. Because if your numbers don't start big on top, you can't just expect to contact 1 or 2 people and have 1 or 2 closings drip out the bottom. That's not the way it works, right? Yes, sir, Mr. Zaromsky.
So I've got more of like a specific market question, like in this marketplace. Like you told me, if I said to you last year I signed 3 buyers in a weekend, I'd be jumping for joy, right? Right now I see that and all I think to myself is, wow, I got a lot more work and probably won't get any of those under contract until the market shifts, because one was an FHA, another one was a VA. I got 1 conventional, so I'll probably get the conventional person sold. So I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? But I also don't want to waste my time. So what's the right mindset I should have moving forward in today's market?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I'll give you my personal answer, which is pretty close to what I can back up statistically, pretty close, not 100%. My personal answer is when you are looking to start whether you're looking to figure out where to find success in a current market, or if you're looking to shift your business from a buy side heavy to a list side heavy, or from a list side heavy to a buy side heavy. I'm not sure why you would go that way, but every once in a while someone maybe surprises me, right? When you're doing that, one needs to start to focus on one side or the other, right? And so Jonathan's point is, right now, for all intents and purposes, unless you are in outer space, when you list a property, it should go on the market and sell relatively quickly, right? And by relatively quickly, I mean certainly within the first 7 days. Most properties in most towns and cities across the state, in most price ranges, are selling in that first weekend, right? With lines out the door and multiple offers. That's just still a reality for many towns and cities and many price points across the county and across the state. So the question becomes, what do you do with the other side, right? What if you're collecting buyers? My personal opinion is that you don't necessarily look at buyers as the enemy right now, because statistically, what the numbers say is that most towns and cities are seeing year-over-year increases in units sold. Year-over-year increases in units sold. I can back that up with our own organization, right? Our own market centers, year-over-year units sold are up. Well, guess what you need for a unit to sell? You need a seller and you need a buyer. So there are opportunities for buyers out there. What you need to do is not be oh God, there's a word that's escaping me right now, complacent about how one works with a buyer, right? The buyer consult becomes massively important to set all those expectations. Making sure that you're setting expectations in that buyer consult. And again, we start our buyer unit either midday Friday or next Tuesday, a week from today. So watch for that. Honing in on making sure that they understand the arena that they're stepping into, having conversations way up front to make sure that the buyers are prepared, that the list price is simply the minimum expectation set by the seller, right? If you don't know that by heart, write that down, because that's a great script with buyers. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, with today's current momentum, the list price, I don't want you to be surprised, the list price for a house is the minimum expectation set by that seller. It's not a starting point for negotiation, right? Because most buyers like to think of a list price as the starting point for negotiation. That's not how it works right now. Right now, it's the minimum requirement that the seller has set. And as a matter of fact, in most cases, the minimum isn't quite good enough. I'm curious, are you prepared to really go to battle to obtain a property, knowing there's a bit of a listing shortage, knowing that right now the scales are tipped in the seller's favor? Are you ready? Are you able? Right, we're going to have my friend Karen Mulreed on tomorrow for a 20-minute or so conversation around the financing side of things to get you ready for our buyer unit. And that has everything to do with, you need to make sure people are able first. Right, there may be some loan programs that are just not competitive today. And having those conversations up front may help people make a decision. But for me personally, I would not excommunicate the buyers just yet, because I really do believe that the current market is here to stay for the remainder of this year. However, there are signs all across the county and all across the state that the veracity, did I just say veracity? I think I blended two words. I blended velocity and ferocity.
Hey, it sounds correct though. It sounds like a word.
Okay, thank you, Robert. I appreciate that. So,
I heard veracity,
yes. Well, so
which is a
whatever,
word.
whatever I said, just know that what I meant was the pace, right? The pace of the current market is starting to slow down a little bit. We are seeing some additional inventory show up in certain towns and cities in certain pockets. We are seeing fewer 25 and 35 offer extravaganzas. We are seeing less ridiculous lines at open houses, right? Now, again, that doesn't mean that it'll turn off tomorrow, but I do believe that creating the contacts and the opportunities with those buyers right now, even if they self-select out of the market after you kind of prep them for where they're headed, you've now created that opportunity for June or July, or for August or September. And, you know, call me crazy, but the bank that holds my mortgage, they want to get paid every single month. I mean, I keep looking at them thinking, you know, didn't I just pay you last month and you're sending me another opportunity to send you some more money? So what's my point? My point is business is business is business. And until we can financially afford to say, I'm going to step away from that or pass that off as a referral, I think the answer is you say yes, 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 and yes, and then just be really aggressive, qualifying and setting expectations so that you don't waste time with people who aren't willing to play the game the way it has to be played to win today. And the way I would look at that is you want to make sure that you're setting those expectations properly so that they're not wasting their time, right? You want to come at that from, how can I help you make a decision so that you're not frustrated? How can I help you make a decision so that you're not resentful of me 4 weeks from now when you haven't obtained the house that you are looking for because you're not playing at a high enough level, right? And so that goes back to that very first day when somebody put on the table, you know, buyers are liars. And I said, that's probably one of my least favorite phrases because I simply don't believe it. I don't believe buyers are liars. I believe that most buyers are looking for an opportunity to be educated at a level that they understand the decision-making ahead of them. And that we have to pull back on us. That's not on them, because our job is to educate. Our job is to make sure that they understand exactly what's going on. Remember the job description I gave you on day one, to interpret current conditions such that the client can make the best decision possible. That's not different in this conversation. Donna.
I just wanted to add one thing to this really important conversation that Rick is talking about, because right now it is the most important thing you can do. But add on the fact that all that educating and interpreting and everything, you can also bring that to your co-broke. We have a massive opportunity here, Keller Williams, the training and the opportunities that we get to learn. When you take that into a situation, Jonathan mentioned VA and FHA, there are people who will turn that away out of hand because they simply don't understand it. And if you do, and you can offer that support and guidance and walk the co-broke, I'm not talking about your client, the person who you're trying to sell your client to, if you can give them the skills, the language, the words, the understanding to be able to accept your client, you've done a service to your buyer like you wouldn't believe. And our co-broke community is, let's just say, they could use our help.
Yeah, that's well said, right? Because sometimes there's that conversation of, oh, a loan program I don't think makes sense. Okay, well, let's talk about it, right? Hey, first, let's make sure that it's actually coming from the seller, right? Not in a confrontational way, but from a let's talk this through. So that's a great point, right? We have an opportunity not only to educate the buyers to make sure that they know what they're headed into, but we also have an opportunity to take their scenario and educate the community around the buyers to see how much more we can, how much further we can push those scenarios. Great point. Carol.
Hi, Rick. I have a question on the listing side. The past week or so, I've been getting the same objection over and over again. Someone may be interested, thinking, yes, it's a good market, they're going to list their house, and then they will come back and say, well, we're going to hold off even though the market will shift because we have nowhere to go. And I've heard that same thing. I really don't know how to get around that.
Yeah, so I will tell you, it is just a little plug for tomorrow. We have our all agent business mastermind at 1 o'clock, I think, tomorrow. Is that right? Does anybody know the calendar?
Yeah. 1 o'clock.
Yes, so 1 o'clock tomorrow. All agent business mastermind, and there are no parameters for that. That is a mastermind for everyone. And in our Capper mastermind yesterday, we had a bit of a conversation around that. Actually, I think in the last couple of masterminds, we've had conversation around that. And what I can bring to the table quickly on that is you have to help people recognize what's factual. As I said, statistically, we are selling more houses now than we were this time last year or this time the year before, right? Units sold are up. Now, this time last year, we were only a month into Bizarro World, right? Which means everything that was already going to close was closing. So we put these transactions that closed this time last year and in March together in January and February. We didn't know Bizarro World was coming per se in January and February. So you can't go back and blame the health scenario on these numbers. So we're outperforming all of that. If there were truly nothing for anyone to purchase, those numbers would not be going up. Is it true that inventory is tighter? Yes. Is it true that buyers may have to do certain things to win a property that they didn't have to do a year ago? Yes. Is it true that there is nothing out there to purchase? That's actually not true. You just have to be willing to A, fight for it, B, wait for it, and C, make decisions on the list side that allow you the flexibility to not be afraid, right? And what that means is we will put your property on the market, and then we'll kind of wrap you in some bubble wrap. We'll make sure that we push out there that property only conveys when suitable housing is found by the sellers. Most sellers don't need more than 30 or 60 days after they have their house under agreement to actually find a property. It's what most of us are finding. It's what most of your colleagues are actually finding when they're out there working with sellers who are also buyers. It's a rare occurrence that somebody goes more than that 30 or 60-day period and has to go back to their buyers and say, look, I couldn't find anything. Sorry, I'm not moving. Or you need to give me an extra 30 days and we need to figure something else out. I've seen more belts and suspenders in contracts in the last 6 months than I have ever in my entire 21.5-year career, right? And all that is sellers making sure that they have an additional opportunity to go and find something. Here's the other thing I would encourage all of us to do. We have to start changing the narrative. We ourselves have to start changing the narrative. And so we can't be continuing to say things like there's nothing out there for people to buy. I'm so frustrated with my buyers because there's nothing out there for people to buy. Because now we're just proving that narrative correct. We have to start saying things like, you know what, the good news is it feels like some inventory is starting to loosen up. The good news, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, is that interest rates are still crazy low. So you can afford to actually buy higher because your money will go further. The good news, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, is that your house that you just left is still your house, and you have a contractual right to take it back if you don't find a property. Most sellers only need some iota of security that they won't be homeless in order to take the step, go and find the buyer, sell their house, and then go see what's out there, right? And most of them are finding something to purchase. The other thing to have a conversation with sellers around is, look, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, knowing that right now is probably in the last 15 to 16 years, and perhaps for the next 15 or 16 years, the absolute best moment in that 30-year period of history for you to put the most money in your pocket as a seller. Is it worth a little bit of inconvenience? And what I mean by that is, might you consider a rent back scenario? Might you consider a short-term rental? Might you consider a year-long rental scenario to give you plenty of time to find that property? Hey, I'm also curious, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, what were you thinking about doing like long-term? Have any dream trips that you wanted to take? What if all of a sudden, actually on a mastermind we had the other day, one of your colleagues said to us all, she had a seller who said, you know what, it has always been my dream to go and live for a year on the south of France. So guess what we're doing? We're selling our house and we're going to rent something on the south of France for a year. We're just making this year that year. And then we'll come back and figure it out when we get back. Even better, because they don't have to worry about their house. I know some of your colleagues who didn't think that they would put their house on the market that are putting their houses on the market right now, because they know, because it's what they do for a living, that this is the best time to cash out of that particular property. Some of them are moving into small condos for a couple of years. So the conversation needs to start being, how much do you need to be able to put in your pocket to live with some inconvenience, to live with a different plan than you thought? 50, 60,000, 70,000? Does it need to be 150,000? like name your number and let's see about it. If your number isn't in the cards, well then stay. How many of sellers that you guys are talking to haven't been able to sell after the crash in 2008 because they were waiting for the numbers to climb back up? Guess what? History will show us that 2021 is the year. It's when it came back up to at least a peak before it started to flatten out. So for all those sellers who have been waiting to recover equity, now's their time. You need to be going back to them and saying, okay, you've been waiting since 2012 for this to happen, right? Some of them have been waiting since 2008, but 2012 was at least the first year we saw some recovery after the crash. So you've waited a decade. It's now arrived. Are you willing to take action?
So the people that bought the house at the height of the market before the crash, those are the people we should call.
I think it's a great prospecting opportunity.
Okay. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. So I don't know how helpful that was, but those are some thoughts that that we've been talking about in other masterminds that I thought I would push out and share with you. Whew. All right, guys. Let's cruise forward because we do have a bunch of things to get through today in terms of source of business. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry, because Robert gave me both pieces of homework. So do let me check in on your calendar. Anybody take a crack at creating a calendar for the week? How did that go?
Not well at all.
Uh-oh. Right. So talk to me about the challenge that created, or talk to me about the success that you had with it.
I don't know. I guess I'm not. It's backwards how we're doing it now. You know, since we have to put our off day first. Yeah, like I guess I'm just like my whole life I just put my work things on the calendar and not my off days. You know, so to be honest with you, I didn't even try to crack at it. Like,
Got it.
I made my calls.
Well, and so here's what happens, right? So when we don't start scheduling, right, we don't have any kind of actual schedule management going on. It's far too easy for life to kind of show up and steal our time. And so the idea of the exercise of starting to build what that week looks like, and I only asked you to kind of outline when you wouldn't work, when you would work on lead generation and conversion. And what was the third thing I asked you to put in there? Actually, I think we ran out of time before I told you the third thing, didn't I?
Yep.
Yeah, so here's the third thing. So here's the third thing that goes into your calendar. At least twice a week, time to work on your business, not in it. And you only need 30 to 45, maybe 60 minutes twice a week for on your business time versus in your business time, right? The rest of the time, right? So you now you put your lead generation time in, you put your time off in, you put your lead generation and conversion time in, you put your 2 little blocks of working on your business, not in your business in, and guess what? Those of you looking at all the blank space, well, that's what you fill up with appointments, right? So if you're looking at lead generation opportunities 3 days a week for an hour a day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 9:30 to 10:30, whatever your number is, or maybe it's 5 days a week for 2 hours a day, whatever your schedule happens to be, and you have your 2 blocks in the afternoon of working on your business, not in your business. All the rest of that time, the blank space, is what you attempt to fill in as you're generating leads and converting them to appointments, right? So you leave those opportunities open, right? You schedule in some education, because when we went through the 20%, right? Number 6 was practice, education, and role play. So you've got some time for that scheduled in there, and then you fill in Appointment times. Bam, I'm going on a listing appointment. Bam, I'm going on another listing appointment. Bam, I'm working with a buyer. Bam, I'm working with another buyer, right? And that's how you start to fill in the rest. So do me a favor. Spend time in the next 24 hours before 4 o'clock tomorrow building a 7-day calendar. I want you to at least take a 7-day look at what a calendar looks like that accomplishes the things that we know have to be accomplished each day and each week in order for you to have continued success. This way, you're not relying on the roll of the dice or luck such that something doesn't come in and steal your time. P.S. You also have to kind of marry yourself to that schedule. If you just write it down and don't look at it, it's not worth some writing down so much, right? You got to be on purpose about it. And don't forget this rule, because this is an important rule. If you must erase, you must replace, right? And so does sometimes life or business show up? Yes. If you struggled with that answer, well, see me after class, because boy, oh boy. Right? Life and business shows up. That's just the way it works. And so sometimes you have to make an adjustment. However, for the most part, I want you to look at that lead generation time as a sacred entry into your calendar. Way too much, right? Georgia says way too much in my calendar. I get it. Strip it down. Strip it down.
Rick,
Yes, sir.
broad question, I guess. What would be the best times to put, or what would you think in your experience in your 21 and a half years? What's the best time to do lead gen, cold calls, or call your data?
Yeah, great question. And so who has an answer to that? What do you think?
Anytime.
So I love that answer, Karen, because I like it because everybody works a little bit differently and everybody's world works a little bit differently, right? And so there isn't necessarily a right or wrong time. However, there is a best practice around this, right? What's that best practice? Jonathan, you have that for us?
Mornings.
Yeah,
Yes.
first thing, when depending on your lead source, if you're calling expireds and for sale by owners, first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
Me personally, I'm at my best in the morning, so I call then. Some people are at their best at night, so you can call a different lead bucket. Maybe you do circle prospecting, absentee owners, for rent by owners, where there's not a time crunch on those leads.
So when you say in the morning, what time do you start? I mean, I don't want to be called like at 7.
Some agents call expireds at 7 o'clock in the morning. I don't, but
That's tough.
I think that's cruel and unusual punishment. But it's but if you want to be the first one to get those leads,
Maybe at 8.
yeah, it's your call. I don't feel right calling people that early, and I'm pretty sure there's a law about that, at what time you can make those calls. I'm not sure what it is. I would never call someone that early, but
I figure my thinking is 9 o'clock, not earlier.
Yeah. So here's the thing. If you need to, right, because we've entered the land of opinion, right? And there's 33 of us on this call, and there's going to be 33 different opinions about what time you should call, when you shouldn't call, what's too early, what's not too early. I'll give you some thoughts. We're probably going to cover expireds shortly, so I'll give you some thoughts around, especially calling expireds. And yet, the real answer, Robert, to your question, in my opinion, is mornings work best simply because you typically have more energy in the morning and less time has elapsed for life and you know what to happen.
Did he just freeze?
Ricky
I
froze.
think
Yeah,
he's
I think
frozen.
he froze. It was either that or he was waiting for an answer. We kind of like, ah.
Yeah, I think
It was a good pose.
he-
I bet he's in a really great dialogue right now. He's probably like in the middle of an awesome.
Yeah, no,
point
he's still talking. He
making.
doesn't even notice that we are not in,
Yeah.
which is great because it gives me time to catch up on the note taking.
Makes for a good recap.
So the when he was talking about the calendar stuff, right? Is that in the meeting notes that they sent out?
No, he said that in the last class pretty much. Like
Yeah.
he spoke about that. I think at the beginning and then towards the end mostly. But yeah, nah, he just said like, here's your homework, 10 calls and work on your calendar,
Okay.
which I really need help. I am the worst at scheduling things. Oh my God, I got like post-it notes all over. You should see my working area. I have like, it's crazy. So I really
Yeah.
have to work on that.
Yeah, I'm just getting into a place where my business has gotten busy enough where, and I'm about to be a dad. My wife is pregnant. She's gonna have a baby in a couple
Oh,
weeks.
wow, there
so-
you go, man.
Yeah, well,
John, congrats.
thank you so much. But now, scheduling. It becomes really important. I'm going to assume when you have a newborn, if you want to be self-employed and survive, you got to make the
Oh
time.
man, no sleep at all. You better
Yeah.
catch up on your sleep right now.
There are a
Self-employed.
lot of
brand
us
new
on the
dad.
call who can help you with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Just ask.
Well, yeah, well,
Right,
I'm
Donna?
asking.
Well, it really depends on, I mean, if you're gonna, if you can schedule with your wife, it depends really on what kind of baby you have and how
Yeah.
needy he or she will be. He. Then, it's kind of, first week they sleep a lot unless they are upset. And I never had a colicky baby, so I can't really speak to that. Then they cry,
Yeah.
but they do sleep a lot. And if you guys can kind of say, okay, I'll do this feeding and you do that feeding, depending on, again, it's complicated. Are you breastfeeding exclusively? Are you going to use a bottle? Are you going to use a bottle
Yeah.
for dad and breastfeed? There are all these issues or choices, right? And you
Hmm.
kind of can't make any firm plans until you see. It's a wait and see.
Yeah. I don't do that well.
Oh, well, yeah. Kind of
Congrats
like,
again.
Yeah. Thanks.
You don't do that well yet.
Well,
You're about to learn how to do it really well.
mhm.
yeah, I'm a habitual planner.
Babies don't plan.
No, I
Babies
know.
are.
Oh, I'm gonna try to create structure around that. Best I
You
can.
can. Good luck.
Yeah, I know.
Jonathan, we are all laughing at that.
That's adorable.
Yeah, yeah.
Those of us with experience, that's a good one, Jonathan.
That's funny. Keep us posted.
Here's my best advice. Don't have a lot of expectations for
Mm.
yourself, your wife, or your child in the first 3 months. Would you say that's fair, Steve, Donna?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Just enjoy it as much as you can and roll with it. It's
Yeah.
a blessing.
Don't stress.
And remember, one other piece of advice I want to give is that, we've been going through this process for 20,000, 30,000 years. It's ingrained in our DNA. Just roll with it. Because
Yeah.
kids throw so many different curveballs your way. You can never plan for it. You just
True.
roll with it.
Yep.
Very
Throw it
true.
all
Yeah.
out. the window.
Actually, it really does teach you how to pivot.
Yep.
Mm.
That is the pivot center,
The ultimate pivot.
right?
All righty.
There he's
There, he's
guys.
back.
I got booted out. I think our internet crashed here at the office and I couldn't get on with anything. So I was just about to go outside with my phone and see what I could do. but then it came back up. So my apologies for that. It sounded like you filled the time brilliantly. So let's dive back in. So I don't remember exactly what we were talking about when I got booted. Anybody remember where we were, or shall we just cruise forward with our source of business?
We were at the
calendar.
end of what time is the best time to call, but pretty much at the end of that speech.
Yeah, there you go.
To transition into your next thing.
Yeah, so again, mornings are best for a lot of the reasons I mentioned before I got booted out. So when at all possible, stick with that, right? The other good part about the morning is that if for some reason your morning gets hijacked, you still have the afternoon to replace the morning with, right? You don't have to call it a wash of a day. If you're booking 4 to 6 or something to do prospecting and something happens there, it's kind of hard to replace it from 8 to 10. So just some thoughts. Now, here's what's fun. We're going to move into source of business. A lot of you are kind of shell-shocked right now because all we've been doing is talking about making phone calls. Now, the reality is real estate is a contact sport, and so you need to be talking to people, but you don't always have to be talking to people on the phone, right? There are other forms of lead generation and sources of business. And so we're going to spend the rest of our time today and a good part of tomorrow kind of walking through those sources of business. And so to get us focused on what those sources of business are and give you an opportunity to kind of direct where we go next, I'm going to launch a poll. So those of you watching your screens, you should now have a poll on your screen, which says, please choose one of the following. What source of business do you want to tackle next? So just choose one of those, and we will work from there. Please note we will get to all of them. Alrighty, so only 65% of you have voted. I'm going to close that down in just a minute. Got another 8 of you who need to vote. Going once, going twice. All right, I'm going to close that down. All righty, so we had database loyalty, open houses, and expireds kind of come out on top. So that's where we're going to go first. Oh, I didn't share the results, did I? Database, open houses, and expireds came out on top, followed closely by farming and social media, and then events and orphans following that. Nobody chose raving fans. My goodness, the raving fans are upset, but you know what? They'll get over it. So let's do this. Let's pivot a little bit and talk a little bit through some open house opportunities, and then dive into expireds and for sale by owners, and then finish our night with database loyalty program. So we'll hit at least all 3 of those in the next hour and whatever we have, hour and 10 minutes, and then follow up tomorrow with the rest. Sound like a plan? Well, good, because you picked it. All right. Open houses. Talk to me about what you know about open houses. Great lead source, not a great lead source?
Great lead source.
What do you find at open houses?
You can either search the smart MLS to see who, to see who in your office has the listing that's coming up. Call,
Got it. And
call the
so-
agent.
So I'm just going to pause you just for a second, Robert. The question I asked was, who do you find at open houses? Not where do you find
Oh,
open houses?
sorry.
Right? Who do you find at open houses? We're going to get to your answers in just a second because that's my next question.
Buyers.
You find buyers at open houses. Who else do you find?
Agents, I don't know. Looky-loos, neighbors.
Yep.
Sellers.
Sellers. Oh yeah. You find sellers at open houses.
Looking to see. what's-
And my favorite kind of people to find at open houses are, anybody know it?
I don't know.
How about
Agents?
buyers? How about buyers who also need to sell?
Oh, yeah. Well,
Woohoo! I'm loving that.
mhm.
So here's what I'll tell you. In the last, I'm going to say 24 months, we have seen such a massive uptick in sellers who shop for agents by visiting open houses. So here's what I want I want to dispel the myth that the only thing you find at open houses are buyers, right? Because there's two things you have to remember. Number one, you will find what you're looking for. So you need to start setting a different expectation and setting different goals with your open houses so that you are finding what it is you're looking for. And if you're looking for sellers, they show up at open houses. They sometimes show up disguised as looky-loo neighbors, right? And what I find is fascinating is that oftentimes real estate agents will have the neighbors show up and think, oh, okay, well, I was hoping for a real buyer to show up. They dismiss the looky-loo neighbors as people that they just kind of have to tolerate. Guys, those are my favorite visitors to open houses. Absolutely my favorite visitors to open houses. Oh, you live next door? Awesome. How long have you lived there? What are your thoughts about this house? What are your plans for the future? What brings you in today? Right? Are you asking questions to get better information at open houses to uncover a potential seller? Here's the other thing that you have to get good at open houses that may not be intuitive. Instead of having a laser focus on finding a buyer who wants to buy a house, that house or any house, start having a laser focus on converting people into sellers. Right? So when people walk in the door and they say they live in the neighborhood, the first thing you want to do is make sure that you are showing them how brilliantly you are showcasing their neighbor's property. Because remember, they're not there because they want to see the neighbor's kitchen one more time before they call their own agent. They're there auditioning real estate agents. They're there to see what you do that might be unique or different or appealing as a representative of their neighbor's house, such that they might want to hire you. That's the mindset I walked into every open house with. And I took more listings from open houses than I probably had a right to. Instead of just dismissing the people from the neighborhood as nosy neighbors. Right? First of all, you don't want to dismiss the nosy neighbors even if they're not sellers, because those nosy neighbors, again, they're there for a reason. Who do they know? Are you in the market? No. Who do you know that might be in the market? Are you here looking around for someone you know? Who do you know at work or at church that might be interested in this house? Anybody in your family want to come and live closer to your kids? Right? Neighbors have a sphere. Neighbors have a database. You want to make sure that you can access that database. So you want to start creating relationships with those neighbors as well. So before we move forward, I didn't give you this, and I'm sorry. Let me take a half a step back. What is the number one source of buyer leads for most real estate agents in the United States? Number one source.
Sphere of influence.
Absolutely, database, right? The database is the number one source of buyer leads. What is the number two source of buyer leads for most agents in the United States?
Open houses.
Open houses is correct. Let's flip it. What's the number one source of sellers for most agents in the United States?
People that you know.
Yes, database again, right? So database comes in at number one, both on the buy side and on the list side. What's the number two source of sellers for most agents in the United States?
Open house?
Networking.
Say it again, Karen.
Networking.
Say it again, Jonathan.
Open house?
Oh, open house, Robert. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Expireds. Expireds is the number two source.
Yes.
So number one source of buyers, database. Number two source, open houses. Number one source of sellers, database. Number two source, expireds. The good news is that based on your choices, you chose the top three lead sources for most real estate agents to obtain buyer and seller business in the United States to kind of run through this evening. So congratulations. You clearly have an eye for this, right? So let's keep cruising back with open houses. So Robert started to answer a question before that I hadn't asked yet, but I'm going to ask it now. Where do you find open house opportunities?
I'll go again, I guess. Like I said before, you can go to the Smart MLS and see who in your office has something coming up, and then you can call that agent and see if you can do the open house or co-host the open house with them.
Love it, right? So let's make that opportunity number two. Opportunity number one is your own listing inventory,
Yeah, well, sure.
right? Your own listing inventory. I want to continue to push us towards listing, and then when you're done, list some more,
Mhm.
right? Stay focused on building a listing inventory such that you then have your own inventory to work from. The second opportunity, as Robert put on the table, is if you don't have your own listing inventory, or you've kind of open housed your own listing inventory to death, because that can sometimes happen, right? You have two listings and you spend 4 hours a weekend, every single weekend in those two listings. It's like by the third weekend, you want to blow your brains out. So sometimes because you need a change of pace, you search for some additional open house opportunities with colleagues in the office. Now, I don't necessarily, unless it's your very first time doing an open house, and because we're talking about open houses today, I am going to encourage you to find an open house to host this weekend. If you've never hosted an open house before, I encourage you to find a colleague to go ahead and do that with. Shadow an open house this weekend.
Okay, I have a question
Yes.
about that. So if I were to host an open house with somebody and then we get leads, how do we divide up the leads? How does that work?
Yeah, so I'm not necessarily a huge fan of co-hosting open houses unless the house is enormous and you really need more than one person. However, if you decide that you're going to co-host with someone, and now again, you shadowing someone this weekend, if you've never hosted an open house before, that's different. You're there to shadow. You're not there to obtain leads. So you're there to kind of watch what goes on with the slightly more experienced agent that you are shadowing to kind of learn. Once you've done that one time and you're hosting your own open houses, right? Regardless of whether it's your inventory or someone else's inventory, when you're the host, those leads belong to you.
I see.
If you choose to co-host with someone, you just need to have a conversation before the open house starts as to, okay, so what are we doing? Are we doing round robin? Like the first person comes in, I get, and the second person comes in, you get, and then third person is back to me?
Funny.
Or are we sharing, if anybody comes to fruition, are we sharing that client?
Mhm.
I'm going to tell you that gets tricky after a while, because now you're sharing that client, and now that client also has a house to sell. So now you're sharing that listing. And if you're sharing that listing, Well, what about the leads that come from internet marketing of that listing that you're both paying for, right? And so all of a sudden you have this whole snowball effect of shared stuff. So again, I'm not a big fan of the co-host unless you absolutely need a second person there because the house is enormous or whatever. Or you might be expecting enormous crowds, right? And if you can make the co-host thing work, the only thing you have to do is be clear up front. Don't make assumptions about how the leads are going to work. And then the leads show up. And then afterwards, you start sharing your assumptions about how the leads are going to work. Because I guarantee you, once actual leads show up, the assumptions are all different. Right? So be clear up front about what that looks like. How are you choosing an open house?
Whatever is available, what you like.
So whatever's available, what you like, what else?
Well, there's, a school of thought that would suggest that if you want to direct your business in a certain slice of the economic market pie, then make your choices based on list price.
Yes, so price point is definitely another way you can choose open houses. What else, Patrick?
How about the activity in that area, past activity?
Yeah, I love market data.
Yep.
Geolocation.
Yeah, so geographic location. Go ahead, Patrick.
So for the open houses, I just did that, but emailed listing agents that are hosting multiple houses, because if they don't have a team, then their weekend's probably pretty full. And like you said, they might need some time off. So that's another way to kind of choose what open houses you're listing.
Yeah, right. So there are a bunch of those. I would prioritize or prioritize the answers we just got. They're all valid answers. However, I want you to be strategic. If you're going to utilize open houses as a means of growing your business, right? Not just passing time on a weekend, because that's what realtors do, right? And I want you to be really clear about that. I don't say that for comedic effect. I say it because my experience says that so many real estate agents do things not because they strategically think it's going to grow their business, but they do them because at some point, either somebody told them or they think that's what real estate agents do. Oh, it's Sunday, it's 1 o'clock. I guess I should be in an open house. Well, if you're not going to strategically choose your open houses and then strategically work the open house and then strategically have a follow-up plan, an aggressive follow-up plan to convert people into clients after the open house, well, then it's a big old waste of time. And I don't know that I would necessarily spend that time unless you're going to be strategic before, during, and after. So what does that mean? Strategic before means choosing open houses that meet a specific criteria for your business. Meaning, what properties are actually moving? Where is there going to be traffic? Right now, even there are slow moving pieces of this market. I'm not sure I'd want to be in a $2.5 million house in Reading right now at an open house. Right? That's moving far slower than $500,000 to $600,000 in Norwalk, or $600,000 to $700,000 in Wilton or Ridgefield, right? Or $400,000 to $550,000 in Newtown or Monroe. So know the pace of what's happening in each of those locales and start to figure out where you could show up, where there's going to be a line out the door, because the more people that show up, the more opportunity you have to find people who are unrepresented and create an opportunity for an appointment. Now, I don't mean to pick on the high end in Reading, but the reality is even right now, the real high end in Reading moves much more slowly. Right? That's just real. You can run the numbers in the MLS to get where the pockets are that will create better opportunities for you. The other thing I think that Alex put it on the table is host open houses where you want to grow business. I'll tell you a quick story. About 2 years ago, it's probably 2 years ago now, I had an agent come to me and say, Rick, I am just so frustrated. And I said, well, why is that? And she said, well, I have all of these buyers in Oxford. And you know what? I mean, I live in I can't remember where she lived, but it was like, you know, Greater Danbury or something like that. And she said, I just feel like I'm schlepping myself all the way to Oxford, and the price point isn't what I really want, and it's so far. I get all the way there, and then if I have to come back for an appointment locally, and I have to go back again in the late afternoon if I haven't scheduled myself, well, it's just becoming a real problem. And I said, well, I understand. I said, I'm curious, where are all the buyers coming from in Oxford? And she said, oh, well, every single Sunday I do an open house for a realtor in the office, and that property is located in Oxford. I thought, well, yes, that's actually what happens. If you do an open house in Oxford, you attract people in that price point in that town. So if you're not interested in lower end Oxford properties, well, then don't host an open house in a lower end Oxford property, right? And so I tell you that story not to make fun of or be judgmental in any way, but it just kind of never dawned on her that her actions were breeding those results. So, well, what is it you're looking for? Well, I'd rather be in the kind of $600,000 range in the Greater Danbury-ish area. Okay, well, what if you worked on open houses in the $500,000 to $600,000 range in the Greater Danbury area? Find something in Newtown, find something in Ridgefield, find something in Danbury, find something in New Fairfield. Right? What if you focused there? Do you think you might attract buyers who want to live there? So again, I know it sounds crazy to state out loud, and yet be clear that when you choose to host a property, that the people that you will find there are generally people who are going to want to live in that town in that price range. So do you see how you can skew things down and be more strategic about your choices? I'm not sure that I would make a choice based on what was available. I think I would be far more proactive than that. And what that means is, you know, Patrick said, call listing agents. Yeah, that's right. Figure out where you want to be and what price point is moving where you want to be. So say you want to create an opportunity for yourself in Norwalk. Well, then I would run MLS lists of what properties our market centers are listed for are, my goodness, the end of a long day. Run reports based on which properties our market centers represent in Norwalk. And then if you find that the $400,000 to $600,000 range is moving quickly, well, then maybe target in on that because you know you'll have traffic. And then make some phone calls to listing agents. Hey, I see you have a listing in Norwalk on this street. I'm looking to do an open house there this Saturday or Sunday. Is there an opportunity for me to host something there for you? And oftentimes you'll get a yes, sometimes you'll get a no. If you get a no, just move on to the next person. Some listing agents are really possessive of that first weekend of a new listing, right? I know I was. Some of them could care less, right? So just make those phone calls and see about setting yourself up. When I was, open houses were a huge opportunity of business for me personally. And so I used to set up my open house calendar 30 days in advance. Even when I was brand new to the business and didn't have a lick of inventory, I would go through and figure out what my colleagues had and where I wanted to be. And I would ask them, can I do this weekend? Can I do this 2 weeks from now? Can I do somebody else? Can I do this on week number 3? And I would set myself up for 30 days out as often as possible so that I always knew what my marketing plan was going to be to drive traffic to those open houses. And I knew where I was headed. People always ask me, well, what happens, whether it's your own inventory or someone else's inventory, what happens if it sells between now and when you're scheduled to do the open house? That's a great conversation for today, right? Because what do we know? What do we know about how quickly most inventory is moving?
Very quickly.
It's moving very, very quickly. So set up an opportunity with your sellers or set up an opportunity with your colleagues' sellers to say, hey, you know what? As long as everyone is clear that we're still going to do the open house on Sunday, or we're going to do another open house next Sunday, let's just keep those on the calendar. Everybody freaks out when you sell a house quickly and for some reason everyone cancels open houses. Well, why do you do that? Well, because the buyer's agent and the buyers are upset that you're still doing an open house. Well, guys, guess what? The buyers and the buyer's agents don't get to have a vote in that. The listing agent and the sellers get to have the only vote that counts. And if the listing agent and the sellers decide they're going to continue with the open house, as long as the listing agent is clear with the buyer's agent and the buyer's agent clear with the buyers who have just secured this property, look, we are going to host this open house. We're honoring you and your offer. We're not doing it to search for additional offers. We're doing it just in case a strong backup might show up, or we're doing it, the realtor's going to do it to secure additional business, right? Why does that help the seller? Well, didn't we just have a conversation about a lot of sellers are struggling to find houses? Well, if the seller decides to host another open house a week after they've accepted an offer, isn't it possible that homeowners might show up to that open house that we can start having a dialogue with to say, wait a minute, so you have to sell? That's awesome, because these folks who own this property, they're actually looking to buy. Can we connect the two of you, see if we can't get something going on there, and then we'll find you another house to buy? It's all about talking to more people. So there's reasons that make sense for everybody involved to keep moving forward with that. Jonathan, yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I kind of zoned out for a second. I was writing an email. I'm not sure if you went over using open houses as a marketing strategy in the first weekend as a reason why you would keep that open house and just not even accepting offers or considering offers until that first weekend. And you block out your showing time, you go live on a Thursday, you keep it tight, and only make it available for showing starting at the open house. And you tell people to bring their clients to that. To make a line out the door.
Yeah, you can certainly use, I mean, if it's your own inventory, yeah, you can absolutely use that as an opportunity for showings. Be cautious, because if the property isn't available to be seen, right, within 48 hours of it going on the market, you get people complaining. And yet, one of the things as a listing agent that I used to do the last time we had a fast moving market back in 03, 4, 5, and early 06 was we used to put the property on the market on a Monday afternoon. We would have a broker open house on a Tuesday morning. That just dates me now, right? Because I don't really believe in broker open houses much anymore, but we have a broker open house on Tuesday morning, and we would advise the sellers not to accept any offers until Sunday. We would just spend the whole week kind of collecting offers and allowing as many people as possible to see it, because we promised our sellers something that we found our competitors didn't mention. We didn't promise our sellers that we would find them a buyer. We promised our sellers in those days that we would find them the best buyer for their property, right? And that just kind of set us apart. And then that strategy of we're going to put it on and just collect offers till the weekend. And then oftentimes we would host a public open house on the weekends, right? So we kind of bookended the property Tuesday to Sunday with broker open and public open, accept offers all week. Funny side story on that. The house I still live in, I bought, and it was one of our listings, right? So Debbie and I, it was somebody Debbie knew for a long time. We went to see the house on a Saturday afternoon, went back. In those days, we were not pulling people into the office for the second round. Went back on Sunday, listed it, put it on the market on Monday night, and Monday morning when I showed up at the office, I said to Debbie, you know what? I know we're putting this property on the market this afternoon, but I think I'm going to buy it. So you're going to have to kind of take over as the listing agent because it's a conflict for me to continue to advise, except Sunday night when we listed the property, what I had said from my mouth directly to those sellers was, look, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, based on current market conditions, here's what I want you to consider. I want you to consider the strategy of, we put it on the market on Monday, we show it to the brokers on Tuesday, you collect offers all week, you don't make a decision until Sunday after the public open house. I'd already given them that information, knowing full well I was probably going to buy it, but it was my job. And so on Monday, when we put it on the market, on Tuesday morning, when I presented them the full price offer, they came back and said, wow, thank you so very much. However, we're going to take the advice of our realtor and we're going to hold off accepting offers until Sunday after the public open house. So I got a taste of my own medicine. I got to pay $47,000 over the asking price to secure that, which today sounds like nothing, right? In 2003, it was a whole lot. $47,000 over the asking price, right? So I do think that's a great strategy, just by the way.
Hey, Rick.
Yeah.
In a situation like that, do you tell the people that show up that, like, you know, the house has already been like sold, or like, you know, like an offer has been accepted, or do you just continue the open house like you know, like nothing?
So do you?
Like
So
in
you
this
mean you're
situation that you made.
hosting an open house. You're hosting an open house on Sunday, and the buyers have accepted an offer on Friday.
Correct.
Yeah. So that's a great question. I think there is a disclosure that gets to go along with hosting an open house that has an accepted offer, right? And to me, that is as you welcome them in. Right? If the sellers have chosen to accept an offer on Friday and you're going to continue with the open house on Sunday, as you're welcoming them in and they're signing in and giving you their information, the conversation really should be, so I just wanted to, you know, full disclosure, the sellers have just accepted an offer on this particular property. However, they are absolutely looking for backup opportunities just in case. So we encourage you to kind of take your time through the property. If this property ends up not being something that is what you might consider as a purchase, we do have others available that we can certainly show you, right? So I do think when they come in, if you've already accepted an offer, it makes sense to just let them know that. Or else they walk around and say, oh, this is exactly what we wanted. Well, why do that to them and then kind of say, oh, well, unfortunately, you can't have it. Psych. Right. So just disclosure is an important piece of what we do, and just telling the truth to help people still be encouraged that they can kind of either walk through and make a backup offer or see something else secures the opportunity, and it doesn't sour the relationship. So any questions on strategically choosing your open house?
Rick, I had one question.
Yes, sir.
For the offers, isn't there a timeline that you need to present the offer to the seller? Isn't like 3 days or something from when they give you an offer to when you have to present it to the seller? Or is that a different case?
Yeah, so great question. So there really isn't a time. What licensing law states is all offers must be presented to the seller until the day of closing, and that time frame is as soon as reasonably possible, right? And so if you're asking because of the description of we're going to collect offers all week and not address them until the weekend, every time that you would get an offer, you would bring that to the seller. Hey, we have another one. Hey, we have another one. And we would go through them and or ask the sellers, look, is it easier for you to kind of see these one at a time? Or would you like to kind of collect them? Like, we'll let you know every time we get another one, collect them and then just go through them one time with kind of a big chart, right? As long as the seller is driving that bus and you're presenting, quote unquote, presenting the offer in as reasonably quick of time as possible, which to me is less than 24 hours, right? There's no reason, if you can't present the offer in a 24-hour period of time, it means you should be having someone cover for you who can. So to me, it's really same day, certainly by the next day, is that timeline. But no, there isn't actually a ticking clock that says within a certain period of time. It just needs to be as soon as is reasonably possible. Does that help?
Yeah, thanks, Rick.
Sure. So let's talk about open houses. That is what we're talking about. Let's talk about number of open houses as a lead generation tool, right? What do I mean by that? If in fact, open houses is going to be one of your choices as like a pillar, what's a pillar? Come on, we read it in that document I showed you.
Strength.
Right, a pillar is a foundational source of business that pours leads your way, right? That's a pillar. If it's not a foundational source of business in your business and it doesn't pour leads your way, it's not a pillar, right? And so if you're going to develop open houses as one of the pillars of your business, you need to have a standard around how many you're going to host. Anybody have a thought on an annual number of open houses that you need to be driving throughout the course of the year, knowing full well that there aren't a ton of people who do open houses like, the week of Thanksgiving or the week of Christmas. That doesn't mean you can't, but a lot of people kind of remove themselves for a couple of weeks throughout the year. So yes, you have 52 weeks. A lot of people don't do open houses when they're on vacation, right? Remember vacation? Someday we'll be able to go on vacation again. So, hey, did you hear the EU? Did I tell you this the other day? The EU has now said that they are likely to clear vaccinated Americans for vacation purposes by this summer. Whoo, baby. If that's not a reason to go out and get a shot, I don't know what is. So, so making sure that you have a schedule that says, I'm going to do at least this many open houses to create the opportunity of client acquisition and conversion. How many? What do you think in a year?
48.
48 in a year. 48 in a year.
There's the Steve Scott model.
Once a
I'm
week
not sure
almost.
what that number is, though.
Yeah, so 48, let's see. Oh, Matthew gets his second shot on Thursday. Woohoo! I love that. I have that right, Matthew, right? It is Matthew. The M is Matthew.
Yep. No, you got it correct.
Okay, phew. I suddenly got a little nervous. I don't like calling people by the wrong names, right? So 48 is an awesome guess. Would it surprise you to know that the real number, if it's a pillar of your business, is double that? You need to be looking at 95 to 100 open houses in the course of a year if you expect it to pour leads into your database. If you expect it to behave like a pillar of your business from a source perspective.
Okay, but doing open houses, you want to do different open houses. I once had a listing and I did like the same open house for weeks. And I got a lot of leads, but I mean, I felt like somebody, please buy this house, and nobody did.
Yeah, well, yes, and that's what I mentioned before, right? It's really easy to get stuck in your own inventory. So be careful about that, right? It doesn't mean don't do open houses in your own inventory, but make sure you're mixing it up, because you may be taking listings in a segment of the market that's not moving quite as quickly.
Right.
Right. So you want to mix the strategy of, yes, these are my listings, and so I may do some of the open houses, but here's what's real. Just because they're your listings doesn't require you to sit and host the open house. Right?
I should have done it differently.
So if you go and decide strategically you're going to host open houses here, here, and here this week, and then you do one of your listings and then 3 others that are not your listings because the market's moving faster, or you want to move in that price point or whatever, right? Then you find other people to host your properties. See how all that works?
Yes.
So recognize that doing 2 to 4 open houses a weekend is kind of what it takes to have the amount of business that you're looking to show up from open houses actually show up. Now, I know a lot of you are thinking, okay, so if I'm doing 2 to 4 open houses in a weekend, how am I working with buyers? Right? So here's my answer to that. For some of you right now, that question is not relevant. And that's not a judgment, that's just real. For some of you right now, you don't have a whole ton of buyers that are demanding your time. So spend your time finding them. And you can spend your time finding them by hosting 2 to 4 open houses every single weekend. Right? Do you all know who Ben Kinney is? Ben
Yes.
Kinney, going once, going twice. Right?
Yes,
Ben
I do,
Kinney.
Jen.
Ben Kinney is a mega agent out of Bellingham, Washington, who started, it's probably now more like 10 or 12 years ago in real estate. And he was the cable guy. Like, that's not a reference to the Jim Carrey movie. He was really the cable guy, right? So he came from the guy who shows up at your house to kind of plug in the cable, started in real estate, and within 6 years was one of the top earners in our organization. Ben now owns expansion teams in 50 or 60 different cities. He owns, I think, 3 or 4 market centers out on the West Coast. He has created software companies and sold them. He's a pretty awesome guy. He says, if you don't have anything else going on, I'm not sure why you wouldn't just do an open house every day until you had enough going on to stop doing an open house every single day. Right? I mean, you listen to it and you think, well, yeah, I guess, like, duh, like why am I waiting till Sunday? Is there a law that says Sunday is the only open house day for real estate professionals? No. Can you do open houses on Saturdays? Can you do open houses on Thursday evenings? Can you do open houses on Wednesday mornings? Right? Sure. You could, I mean, if I had a listing by an elementary school, I don't know about where you live, but where I live, the buses drive around empty because everybody drives their kid to school. We still pay for all the buses to drive around empty while everybody drives their kid to school. And that was even before Bizarro Land arrived, right? So it has nothing to do with their health. It has to do with, that's just what happens. And so if I had a listing near an elementary school and I knew that elementary school started at 9 o'clock, I would host an open house from 8 to 10 at that property on a Wednesday or a Thursday morning. So everybody driving back and forth, getting their kids to school, would see my open house. You get a whole nother round of people that you can introduce yourself to, that you can showcase the property to, that you can have a what if conversation with, right? Lots of different opportunities there. The other thing I can tell you about is, and I think Alex mentioned this, right? So Steve Scott, who is, for many of you, the team leader in the Stanford Market Center, he used to be the buyer's agent on my sales team. And so when he was the buyer's agent on my sales team, April, May into June, and then September into October, those were his really busy, heavy open house months. Because that's when he knew he could find the most opportunity at those open houses from a seasonality perspective. And you know what he did? Now, he was a $200,000 a year buyer specialist. And 50% of that came back to the team, right? Which means he was really a $400,000 a year gross commission income buyer specialist. He earned $200,000, and then the team earned the $200,000 on the other side. So $400,000 a year GCI buyer specialist, which means I only say that because it gives you an idea of he was busy. he didn't spend many weekends not out with buyers, right? To create that. Here's my point. He had a model. And in those months that I just outlined for you, April, May, and into June, and then September into early October, he would host 4 open houses a weekend and work with buyers. He would meet his first buyer at 8 o'clock in the morning and work with them until about 10 or 10:30. He would host his first open house from 11 to 1. He would then pay someone to move the signs around so that he could drive from the first open house to his second open house, which started at 1:30, do that open house from 1:30 to 3:30, and meet his second set of buyers at 4 o'clock and work with them until it was dark. And he would do that Saturday and do that Sunday. Because what he knew was he had these A buyers who needed to go out, but he also knew that new clients were the lifeblood of his tomorrow, right? So he wanted to be certain that, especially in those heavy months, he was getting as much opportunity in to showcase himself for new buyers, and he was great at converting at open houses, right? Here's the tip. Here's the key to converting at open houses. It's kind of three different steps. Step number 1, don't try to convert people at the open house. Instead, when they walk in, just treat them like they're already your clients. That's a huge difference. And I will tell you, I have watched and studied agents who seem to be better at converting at open houses versus agents who are less good at that. And the thing that the agents who convert the most people at open houses all have in common is that they don't sound like they are trying to get you to buy a house. They don't sound like they are trying to get you as a client. Instead, you walk in and they just adopt you from the minute you walk across the threshold. You're just now their client. And they treat you that way. They ask you questions that way. All they do is offer help, and more help, even though you haven't signed a piece of paper that says that you're a client yet. Right? And even people that walk out, which frankly happens more times than at the open house, say, wow, you're the kindest, most generous human being I think I've ever met. I think I want to hire you. That happens very rarely, right? So you take care of them at the open house. You behave like the kindest, most generous human being that I ever met. And then they leave with a feeling that they just didn't have with everybody else. And so when you call them later that afternoon to follow up, oh, now wait a minute. Why would you call them the same day? You just saw them. Mostly, I don't call until like the next weekend to see if I could set them up. Minimally, I call them the following day on Monday. No, it doesn't work all that well. You want to maintain the relationship. Call them that afternoon. When you do call them that afternoon, they remember that you're the kindest, most generous human being they've ever met. And they take the call. And you get to have a follow-up conversation that says, you know, it was so great to spend time with you earlier today. I just wanted to call and let you know that, and just reiterate if there is anything I can do to make your home search simpler or more efficient, I am at your service. Please don't hesitate to call. I still haven't asked for the business. Because now we're into number 2. Number 2 is you need to have aggressive follow-up. And aggressive follow-up doesn't mean be annoying, right? Or else I would call that annoying follow-up. This is aggressive follow-up. Aggressive follow-up means you make a phone call before that Sunday, if you're hosting an open house on a Sunday, before that day is over. Then you send them additional properties or houses either that night or the next morning, and you call them to make sure that they got them. Hey, I saw a couple of things that I thought might float your boat, that you might be interested in based on the property we saw yesterday, or based on our conversation around what you're looking for yesterday. I just wanted to bring them to your attention in case you weren't checking your email. Oh, thanks, great. So if anything kind of strikes your fancy, just let me know. I'd be happy to arrange an opportunity for us to see it. And you let it go again. And then on Tuesday, you text them. Hey, did you have an opportunity to check out those listings that I sent? Anything strike your fancy? And then by Wednesday, you've done some sort of connection on social media so that they can actually see that you are a human, right? And don't connect them to your business page. Oh, my stars. Your business page doesn't show them that you're human. Your personal page does. They want to know something about you. They want to know that you're married. They want to know that you have kids. They want to know that you have a golden retriever. They want to know that you took a trip to wherever and you liked it so much you still have the pictures up. They want to see your latest Throwback Thursday picture, right? They want to see that you're a human just like them. Because here's what's real. People will do business with people they know, like, and trust. And this follow-up system I'm giving you is a system that makes sense because it creates trust. Right?
Hey, Rick.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. I can't write and pay attention at the same time too well. So you said send the listing, call one day afterwards, call again 2 days afterwards, and then you send not your business page, but your personal page?
Yeah, and you know the timing of all this can be kind of fluid. You can connect on social media on Tuesday, not Wednesday. I'm just trying to kind of kind of parse it out, right? And be sure that your first phone call is that same day, not the next day. I think that's an important piece. And so here's where it all goes, guys. By Thursday, Niels, I'm so sorry. Did you have your hand up for something specific? I didn't notice it until just now.
I just wanted to kind of share with everyone that I did a couple of open houses this past weekend with Eric. And one was a little bit slow. The other one, we actually got 15 visitors. And the lion's share of the people were represented by agents. And I guess once they're represented, they're untouchable. So, but I would say about 6 of them were not represented. And it turns out that one person was interested in putting an offer that right at the house, but that all fell apart. And then another person gave me their contact details. It was an incorrect email and a phone number that didn't really have an actual, it had like more of those automated voicemails that you would get, from a home phone. But funny enough, the son-in-law called me yesterday to say we want to put an offer on the house, and he thought I was the listing agent. And I was like, no, I'm not the listing agent. I represent buyers. I was just helping a colleague with an open house. And we were going through the whole process about, what it would take to put an offer on this house, but knowing that there was another offer in the house, which I communicated to this person. And then we hung up, and I kept following up with him. So I was kind of annoying yesterday, but I'm getting nowhere with this individual. And I was wondering what your advice to me would be with this particular individual who wanted to put an offer on the house when there's already another offer on the house. And this house is probably going to get an accepted offer at some point, and he is not returning phone calls on behalf of his mother-in-law.
So this is just somebody, this is an assigned client, right? This is just somebody
Someone
who
who
you,
walked into an open house that we had advertised.
yeah. So you know what, to me, you have to know when to hold them and know when to fold them, right? And so somebody cue that Kenny Rogers song, will you?
I have it somewhere in my Apple.
And because the reality is, you can only do so much, right? I mean, like you said, you kind of followed up and followed up and followed up to the point maybe even of being annoying yesterday. And after that, the person that you're attempting to follow up with does actually have to want to play, right? And what happens with people sometimes is they choose not to play and they choose not to tell you that they've chosen not to play, right? And so here are a couple of thoughts. You could make sure that you've communicated in a bunch of different media, right?
Which I have, texting.
So text and then make a phone call, throw an email out, right? Make sure you're cycling through all that because sometimes people will react to one and not the other. What I would do is if you were hosting the open house, that means that the listing agent is one of your colleagues.
Yes.
I would call that colleague and say, hey, could you do me a favor and just tell me flat out that the sellers are about to accept this offer so that I can go and see if I can wrangle up another offer for you.
And that's done. We did that.
Okay. And so then the conversation that you're attempting to communicate is the seller is about to make a decision. If you want to be in the running, let me know, right? You've communicated that?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So if you haven't received anything back, I would move on from it.
Okay. I even mentioned to him in one of my text messages, even if this house goes through with the other, potential buyer, I can certainly send you or your mother-in-law additional listings as they come to market so that you see all the latest and greatest of what's happening in New Canaan, Stanford, and Greenwich. They love Greenwich. They didn't think they could afford it, but they love Greenwich. And so I was, I was being very forthcoming, and it's just, as I said, I guess you can take a horse to the water, but you can't force it to the drink. And I think that's in this scenario.
Well, that is true. But what you can do is you can attempt to make the horse thirsty, right? And so how you would do that moving forward is, so when I say move on from it, I don't mean move on from the client altogether. I mean, move on from this opportunity for this person to make an offer on this house. Because one of a couple of things happened. Either when they found out you weren't the listing agent, they were no longer interested, because some people are only interested in working with listing agents, right? That's just a fact. It happens. It is what it is. So either that happened, or they don't necessarily want to be one of many offers, and so they've just decided to pull away from that. Or they went to a bunch of open houses that day and they met 3 different people and they've already said yes to somebody else, right? Or they're worried about, grandma because she is coming out of the hospital after having surgery, and their time is kind of focused on that right now, and they're not really interested in having conversations about a house, right? People's lives, just like life happens to us, people's lives happen to them, and we get kind of moved down a couple of pegs. So any and all of those things could have happened, right? Don't take it personally. Don't be disappointed by it. Instead, how can you make them thirsty, right? So the first thing I would do is give it some space, because nobody likes to be nagged at. So give it some space. And what that means to me is, so by Friday, choose to follow up again. Hey, just checking in, wanted to make sure everything was okay. I hadn't heard from you after my last few messages and wanted to be certain that that everything was kosher in your world. If so, please note the couple of properties that I've sent to you because I thought you might enjoy them. Let me know if seeing any of those is in the cards. Right. I'll give you a quick story, and then I know we have Alex and we have Donna, but I'm gonna butt in ahead of the two of you and tell my quick story first. And this story is about Elsa Bush. Elsa Bush was a Coldwell Banker agent in the Stamford market when I lived in Stamford. I lived in Stamford from 1994 until 1997. In 1997, we decided to, we knew that my son was about to be born and we were going to move north to, get out of the city. Now, in 1997, Stamford was not really a city, just by the way. It was certainly more city than country bumpkin Ridgefield was, where we moved to. However, it certainly wasn't the city it is today. But we decided to move north. And that was pre-1997 was a year before I got my real estate license. So I was just Joe Seller. And we decided to start looking in North Stamford. In North Stamford first. We met Elsa Bush at an open house in North Stamford. We started looking in North Stamford almost a full year before we actually put our house on the market. Once we met her one time, every single Friday, I would get a message from Elsa Bush. And the message went something like this. Hey, guys, it's Elsa Bush. Happy Friday. Just wanted to check in with you. I'm going to be hosting an open house at 123 Main Street in Norwalk on Sunday from 1 until 3. It would be great to see you if you wanted to stop by. We could kind of catch up. I also want to be certain that I can't be of any assistance to you. Please don't hesitate to give me a call the second I can be. Click. Now, we both worked in Manhattan, right? So it's like, she never got us. It was always a voicemail. We would get home from the city at 8 o'clock on a Friday night, play it on Saturday morning, every single weekend for almost a year. It wasn't quite a year. It was about 10 months. Every single weekend she followed up. Well, guess what? 10 months later, we decided to put our house on the market. And because I'm stubborn, I decided to be a for sale by owner. I'll tell you that story on tomorrow. But I started to be a for sale by owner. Again, this is before I was licensee. So put our house on the market for sale by owner. It only lasted about 3 weeks. And then I had to decide who was going to list my property. One of the calls I made was to Elsa Bush, because I thought to myself, you know what? If she was tenacious enough to call me, not annoyingly, but consistently enough, every single Friday for 10 months to help to try and secure my business, that's somebody that I want to be in business with. That's someone who I would want to talk to potentially list my house. She got an appointment from me. It took 10 months. It wasn't an appointment to buy a house, and we hadn't purchased a house yet. And I didn't ever give her any indication that we were in the market, out of the market, looking not in Stamford anymore, maybe needed to sell our house. Never gave her any of that. She just, for 10 months, decided to keep offering her services. So I tell you that story because I know that we are all anxious to secure that business. And sometimes the business is not securable at the moment it shows up. Incubation is as valuable a skill as conversion. She had a great incubation system that incubated me for 10 months. Now, people always ask, did she get the listing? She did not. I did not list it with her. But that's not the point. The point is she got the appointment. And the whole idea of lead generation and lead follow-up is to secure appointments. Does that make sense? I'm not sure it makes Niels feel any better, but it is a valid example of consistency over time. You may not get everybody immediately. And you won't get everybody every time. But that connection that was made isn't wasted until they call you back and say, look, dude, could you please stop calling? Because we've moved on from you. Or they call and say, hey, thank you so much for all your phone calls. We actually have our own realtor. Or they call you and say, thank you so much for all your phone calls. We've actually purchased a different property. Or they call you and say, thank you so much for continuing your follow-up. I am so sorry that we have been so neglectful. Please don't take it personally. We have been out of the country. We have had a sick relative. We have had whatever happen. We'd like to set up an appointment with you to have a discussion around X. All of those things are possible. And what kept me going was always remembering Elsa Bush. It took me personally 10 months to finally get back to her. And she secured an appointment to win a listing.
Yep. No, and I agree with that. I've done that in my entire career in corporate sales, you know,
Yep.
and the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? So it's,
Yeah.
you know, you just got to keep going after it.
Yep. No, absolutely. But keep making them thirsty, because eventually someone who is thirsty enough will drink. But you're right. You can't make them drink. You just have to keep kind of baiting the hook and baiting the hook and baiting the hook, always offering services, right? The more services you offer, if you have an opportunity to send them a link to your KW mobile app, the consumer app, right? Send that to them to say, hey, you know what? I thought this might make it simpler for you to search certain neighborhoods. And then you can kind of track on your end what they're actually searching for. Utilize technology to help offer another service or something.
Thank you, sir.
Sure thing. Alex.
Yeah, so question about folks not preferring to work with listing agents.
Yes.
How do we know in Neil's experience or his instance that isn't the case? With
You don't.
Right.
Yeah, you absolutely don't. Right. And again, for me, the way around or through that is, so why, just so we're all clear what we're talking about, why do people why do some buyers, right? This isn't everyone. Why do some buyers prefer to work only with listing agents? There's only one reason.
Because they think they're going to get a favorable deal.
That is exactly right. They think part of the commission is in play, right? And so now I will tell you, as a listing agent for most of my career, that was never the case with me. My contract is with the seller. Whether there's only me involved, whether I represent the buyer or not, that commission stays what it is, right? If you have a 6% listing agreement and you're offering out 3 and 3, it's like 3 to you and 3 out, and somebody comes to the table unrepresented and says, I want to make an offer, but I don't want your representation. You can just represent the seller. That's awesome. We can put that together. Right? You can work with your attorney. You can not have anybody. You can do whatever you'd like. But that 3% doesn't automatically go in your pocket. And a lot of buyers think that there's some benefit to them in that a portion of the commission that I have contracted with the seller might end up being used to help them get a deal. My answer to that was, I so appreciate that. That is not how I work. So that ultimately will not be a part of the negotiation. My commission is my commission. So if you'd like full-blown representation, I can offer you that. Please note, if you choose no representation, there isn't necessarily a financial benefit to you or the seller. Just so we're clear, your choice. Right, so in a scenario where someone might be that person, I would just assume they weren't and keep going keep approaching things the way we've been discussing until they raised their hand and said, look, we're not interested in using a buyer's agent because we only want to deal with listing agents. And then I would ask some more questions. Oh my goodness, you're kidding me. How is that working out for you? I'm curious, what's your concern about being represented by a separate entity? I'm curious, are you a little concerned that your representation is also the representation for the seller? right? I might plant a couple of seeds of doubt just by asking some questions. If I could show you a path towards representation that actually could save you time and potentially money, would that be a conversation that you would be willing to have with me?
How are you going to do that?
Because I bring skill to the table.
No, yeah, but money? Just as part of your buyer negotiation.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And so again, I'm not saying I'm a better negotiator than the listing agent. I'm saying what I'm saying to plant the seed of that question is, if I could show you a path that might save you, right? Might is the key word there. That might save you time and potentially money. Would it be worth having a conversation with me? You don't know if I'm better than the listing agent yet. We haven't had that conversation. Anyway, just some thoughts. Donna.
So I just wanted to chime in on the I'm trying to contact them and email the whole thing, and they're not getting back to me. You know, there are two types of business I found. There's right now business, and then there's business that we have to cultivate and eventually will come. And on that business, it really is a long game. My job is to make sure they know that I am there when they're ready. It's actually not their job to respond to everything how I try to reach them. I just need to make sure that I am staying in touch on a regular basis so they don't forget me, they remember the connection. And I found lately, in fact, I heard on a call today that kind of changed my mind about a lot of things. So be really specific, be really definitive about what you're sending them. Don't send them stuff that they can get. So maybe listings isn't, I'm not saying never send them listings, but maybe send them other things like stats on the town, what's going on, my 5 steps to buying a home. I have a new seller seminar coming on. Here's the link. Join me. Stuff of value that they actually need. It was a mindset change for me. You realize that maybe I'm not fishing all the time with the right bait. They can find listings. They can find listings on Zillow. We know that. It might not even be on my site. They can look at listings. But can they get detailed information that shows that I am different and I have a value that they actually need? And something as simple as that can also change their thinking on working with the listing agent as far as once it could be, here's my 5 reasons why you should have representation of your own. Stuff that they can really go, I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
And
So
then when
true.
they're ready, they'll reach out to you because you hung in there.
I love the idea of pivoting, right? Pivoting away from, because are you fishing with the wrong bait? Listings themselves are the bait of, I'd like to sell you a house, right? And so what Donna's offering is, what if you changed the bait out? What if you started to send them information on the town? What if you sent them, oh, you know what? There's an event happening in the town they were looking in that's going on this weekend. Let me make sure they know about that event. Hey, just a current events update, like hot topics. Just wanted to let you know this occurred, right? I love that. I would even go so far. Donna Gilbert's going to laugh at me, but go so far as to broaden it to, hey, you know what? I just finished this great book and I wanted to tell everybody, right, that I care about to go and grab a copy. So now it has nothing to do with real estate at all. It has to do, you just finished, The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, and you want to just share that information.
Right. Get in relationship, become their best friend.
Yeah.
Be part of their world, build community. I love the book. Yeah, I'm stealing that. Thank you.
You're welcome. I just thought of it when you said, like, what else could we do? Like, you know what? You do the things for people that you spend time and have a passion around, right? Share with them. You know what, Donna, the other thing for you is, okay, so Donna breeds dogs, right? And so if you have if you have puppies, maybe one of the things you share with people is, hey, you know what? Oftentimes I find that when people are in a home search, they're also looking to add to their family. Just so you know, I also happen to do X, Y, and Z. And so if once you settle in to your new property, you're looking for a newfound friend, right? You take the things that are relationship bait for you in real life and use that to fish. I gotta write some of those down because those are good ideas.
Yeah. No, everybody's looking for community. Everybody is, especially during COVID when we lost our regular communities. This is a wonderful idea a chance to tap into that.
Yeah, indeed. All right, we got Lisa and Jonathan and we're out of time. So go ahead, Lisa.
Rick, back to when people say, I've had several calls, which have said they are looking to deal directly with the listing agent when they ask me directly, am I that agent? And I say no, that, because they're a buyer, I would say, no, I am a buyer broker and I represent the sole best interests of a buyer. And they will say, well, I like dealing with the listing agent. And I will ask them, why do you see that as a benefit? And they'll say, well, because the listing agent's getting both sides, that they will credit me back part of their commission on the buy side, so I save money. A couple of questions. A, how would a listing agent even do that? Because the agency's fee is the agency's fee. Is the listing agent bringing their checkbook and writing out a check to the buyer?
Yeah. So what I would say, I'll answer that, but don't overthink that, right? Because that's is less relevant than stepping half a step back and answering the first part of your question, right? If you were a buyer and you said that to me, I'm curious what benefit do you perceive from working with a listing agent? And you said to me, well, they're getting both sides, so there's a commission up for grabs that I think I can benefit from. My question to you would be, are you sure? Because I will tell you, as a listing agent for however many years, that has not been my experience. So I would caution you, Mr. Buyer, from making decisions based on information that may be either inaccurate or outdated. I'm glad you asked it though, because it gives me an opportunity to ask you a question. If I could show you a path that benefited you more than working with the listing agent, both in terms of time and potentially money, would that be a conversation you'd be willing to have? And then I'm going to set an appointment and then have a buyer consult, right? Most of these people who run around saying, oh, I want to work with the listing agent, they've never actually had an actual buyer consultation because no one's actually ever pinned them down to say, okay, what would it look like if we spent 30 to 40 minutes doing a deep dive on what it is you're searching for? If after that 30 or 40 minutes you find no benefit in my services, we can part as friends and you can continue running around looking for listing agents. Is that 30 or 40 minutes of time you're willing to spend if it creates a benefit for you both in time and potentially money?
Right. That was kind of my second question to you, how to get around that. But I was also curious on how listing agents are working that out.
Yeah, well, so understand, I can speak for listing agents in our own organization. You don't have a responsibility to the brokerage for the brokerage's side of the fee, right? You get to make those choices about how you choose to run your business, the way you choose to run your business. So in our world, if you chose to give away half of that stated commission because there was no other agent, I would counsel you against it, but you certainly have that right, and you have that right without interference, punishment, or needing to ask permission. How it works in other brokerages, I know is different, and so therefore I won't speak on behalf of other brokerages. I can just speak on behalf of how we are in partnership with you guys.
Yes, because in other ones, I know you would get penalized by 5% of your commission split or things like that. Okay.
Yeah. Good thing you're here. Jonathan, bring us home. You're muted, my friend. You're still muted.
There we go. How's that?
Yes, perfect.
I
I was pretty much just going to say a thing. You can't understate that question. The why do you perceive, why do you think working with a listing agent is in your benefit? That's how I got those buyer appointments this week, and they were calls on my listing, and I was like, I asked them straight out. I was like, look, hey, I'm going to show you my listing. I'm just curious, why do you only want to work with a listing agent? And then we continued the conversation. I was like, okay, great. Well, I'll show you this listing. We'll talk about it. If you're interested, I'll be happy to write an offer for you. But I'd also like to sit down with you afterwards and discuss with you, how I can help you, not why that's not a benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's the thing, guys, I'm going to leave you with this today. You need to understand your own value in order to be able to sell your value to others. You have to know what you are worth and why you are worth it. Marcel, did that make you upset? I said that and Marcel put her head in her hands. Don't think I'm not watching. I'm watching y'all. So recognize that and we can kind of start here tomorrow. You building a value proposition and believing your own value proposition, that's different than believing your own PR, right? You need to build a value proposition and stand behind and believe in the value proposition you have built on behalf of others, and be willing to challenge people when they decide that it's not worth it for them, right? And I don't mean challenge contentiously. I mean, be willing to ask the question, hey, I'm curious, talk to me about that, right? Most of the clients that I work with wouldn't trade my services for all the tea in China. And so I would, before you deprive yourself of the services of a really good buyer's agent, I'd love to be able to have a conversation around what your thoughts are about going in a different direction. Again, if we had a conversation that could benefit you in both time and in money on the buy side of the transaction, would that be 20 minutes you're willing to spend with me? And then close for the appointment. All right, guys, we didn't get quite as far as I had hoped today. So we will dive into expireds and 36 Touch tomorrow, as well as some other opportunities for Source of Business. Have a lovely evening. Thank you so much for spending time with me. It's always my pleasure. And I will see you tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock on our Zoom call.
Thank
you.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.